Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today we are talking with Liz, and you may remember her. She is the raw milk mama, and she has been incredibly influential in the what shall we call it? Food freedom, liberty movement for several years now, and she has a new book out. And I want to talk a lot about that new book. I read it, and it's absolutely fascinating. It tells the story of how she got into this, and that's, I guess, what about the first half of the book is the story of how you got into it, and then the situation, the way things are now, and really how to deal with it, and what you see for the future. So go ahead, let's do a little background. Give us your bio, and then let's talk about that book.
Well, thanks, Judson. Thanks so much for having me on and for reading the book and talking about it. Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. Great to talk to somebody who understands so much of the same systemic problems of what's going on. So, yeah, the book focuses a lot on the history of raw milk. Like, why is it even important? Why does this even matter? And then a little bit, it does, like you said, it gets into my experience. Like, why did I get started on this? Why did it become important in my life? And the politics around it. Why is it illegal? And yeah, I kind of just took off there. But what was the exact question you asked that I'm addressing?
Well, okay. Well, I guess we would need to start from the beginning, obviously, right? So, in the beginning of the book, and I remember you were like, you sent me the book, and I was up all night reading it, and the next day I'm like, I read the book and I loved it. You're like, there's no way you read the book that fast, but I did, and because it's actually a compelling read. I think that's one thing that I would like people to understand. This is not a dry, dull informational book. I mean, you start with the story of, how your kids were getting sick. So
Yeah,
why don't we just start right there? Go ahead.
yeah. Well, that's why I got into it because when my first child was born, she had some stuff going on that was really hard to understand. And I was a very young mom. I had my first at 21. I had a lot of like shall we say conventional inputs. So I didn't even know there was this thing called raw milk that we could really I didn't know anything about it, Judson. I was so young and I'll say ignorant at the time. And it wasn't until my best friend from childhood, she went off to college and she'd been at college for a little while and she started getting raw milk from a neighboring farm. And she reported back to me and she had had some chronic health issues in high school and she's like, "Liz, they're gone. You really got to try this out for Alyssa." So I did. I very, tentatively because at the time I'm like, well, if raw milk is illegal, it must be illegal for a reason. I was still there. And that's when I started reading. And so, Judson, this is long, long ago, before social media, before all of that Like really the internet was still kind of a baby. So I read a lot of books about it and I talked to people about it and I tried to understand it from multiple different angles and different facets. And I did, I spent a lot of time researching this, not internet research, like really researching it. And I learned why it was illegal and what happened to cause it to be that way, shall we say. And I learned about the health implications and the history of raw milk and why this has been an important food for civilizations for millennia. And that set me on that personal path of getting it for my family, watching the changes occur, drinking it myself. Like I am a diehard advocate for clean, safe raw milk, not just
Right.
from any source, but clean and safe. And that launched me into another realm of then working on the advocacy and working to change the regulations and the access issues so that more people could make the choice for themselves.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
that
what I
really,
write
really
about.
is
Yeah,
important. The clean, safe aspect of it. Growing up on a farm, we didn't really have a lot of issues. The cows were out back, and the milk was milked from the cow and put in the refrigerator. And for generations before that, there was no refrigerator. They had a spring house, and that would keep things cool and everything. But now, if you mention raw milk, everybody's like tuberculosis, tuberculosis. I find that a little crazy. Do you want to address that?
absolutely. And I cover this in the book at least to some extent as well, that there's tuberculosis and then brucellosis. And these are like big, scary things. And to be fair, there was a period of our history. We can really get into that if you want, but that's where it gets a little bit dense, where the entrepreneurs and the businessmen of the time of the 1800s decided
Right,
to put the dairies right next to the distilleries. And these were
exactly.
called, yeah, the
Right,
slop
and they were
dairies.
eating all the
Yeah,
leftover grain, and they couldn't process it, and they actually had to color the milk with chalk and stuff because it was so
exactly.
disgusting. Yeah,
Disgusting. And to be fair, tuberculosis was a problem at that time. And there is every reason to believe that milk, in under those conditions, the raw milk was one of the vectors of transmission for the tuberculosis. There's every reason to believe that. And when the pasteurization, okay, here's the crazy part, Judson, like what you just described, what I described. So here are these dairies. The cows are spending their whole lives basically living in their own waste on concrete floors, short lives because they're so unhealthy. There's hand milking, there's no closed milking systems. Workers were not necessarily healthy themselves, hand milking into open
hmm
buckets. That milk was so bad, it had to have chalk added to it to turn it white.
right.
That milk was getting pasteurized. I mean, that the insanity of like even like if you guys recognize that that milk was not good to begin with, pasteurization is not going to make it better.
Well, yeah, and it's so frustrating. I guess it was a few months ago. Trump passed a thing that said we were going to allow beef from Argentina to come in. And having, worked in the food industry, I'm like, well, actually, it's oftentimes much better beef than was being produced here in America because their cows are often not entirely grain fed, but actually eat grass. And man, I mean, I posted on X, Twitter, whatever, and the cattle industry came after me like crazy. They're like, our beef is the best beef in the world. Our corn-fed beef is superior to any beef anywhere in the world, and we lose 40 cents to a dollar for every pound we produce. And I'm like, well, you could just put them on grass and make a profit. Is that crazy? But I mean, literally, cows are not
Yeah.
meant to eat corn.
Or just in very small quantities because they're
Right, yeah.
grazers, right? So they are going to graze whatever grass is in seed at the time. And sometimes that's, ancient corn, right? It's not like
Yeah.
this
Well, but
modern
I mean,
monocropped corn
even
is the
still,
same
I mean,
thing.
cows are not from North America. Cows are a European import to North
Yeah.
America, and corn is an American crop. They did not
Yeah.
have
Yep.
thousands
Yeah.
of years necessary to adapt to this really man-made
Totally.
grain. I mean, corn
Yeah.
does not exist without man's intervention. It took probably what, 10,000 years of Mayans breeding corn before they turned it from a grass into a grain?
Judson, I love this. I love this so much. But like, let me get back real quick to the tuberculosis question. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
about
go
to
for
go
it.
off on another tangent. But so tuberculosis, the claims about raw milk in the 1800s being a vector of tuberculosis are likely valid. They're likely
Hmm.
valid claims. But since then, and also, like, I want to be clear to make a distinction between the raw milk from the swill dairies, those ones that were in
Hmm.
confinement being fed the slop from the distilleries, versus the grass-based dairies in the outlying regions. So the swill dairies were all in cities. They were right next to the distilleries. The other dairies were on the outlying farms, beautiful, etc. So there was something that paralleled that, which was the Medical Milk Commission. And this is really important because this was the organization of basically volunteer doctors who took it upon themselves to go around and study the outlying dairy farms and certify them to say this is clean raw milk. It doesn't pose the same problems as the swill dairies. So there were these two different types of dairy, and the one was a vector likely for tuberculosis, brucellosis, other diseases. The other one was not.
Hmm.
But at the time that there was this uh, battle's the wrong word, but I can't think of a better one, between pasteurization versus certified clean raw milk, the pasteurization model won out only because it was considered more efficient.
Right.
The raw milk from the certified dairies was a little more expensive. The pasteurized milk from dairies that really humans should not have been drinking from at all, that was
Right.
just considered more efficient. It was cheaper. But that brings up another great point, which is the modern confinement dairies and the modern industrial scale dairy production methods. Also, some of them, arguably, maybe we shouldn't be drinking from.
Right.
So, all that to
Well,
say,
yeah.
there was legitimate reason to be skeptical of raw milk about 150 years ago. Now we've put things into place in a lot of areas for the for those who are producing raw milk for human consumption. There's good reason to believe we can do it cleanly and safely by following some really basic protocols.
Exactly. And I have an issue with well, I have an issue, what do they call it? CAFO farming
Mhm.
in general. What it contain animal feeding, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
confinement animal feeding
uh,
operation.
yes, my family land is now owned by Smithfield. Um, I cannot stand to spend any time on my what used to be my family property because the entire county stinks like horribly.
Mm,
Between Smithfield and I guess Springer Mountain Farm and Mountain Air Chicken, um, they own the whole freaking county. I'm not kidding you.
yeah,
And like the county is now like essentially 90% illegal immigrant, basically slave labor.
yeah,
And it's just disgusting. I mean,
yes.
and people are getting weird cancers and everybody's getting ALS. And they're like, why is this
Wow.
happening? And I'm like, well, look at what's being dumped into your reservoir. Do you not get this, people? And meanwhile, just like right up the road was a Teflon plant. DuPont, the DuPonts are relatives of mine. They're, old French family, and they had this, big operation, and they had a chemical called Gen X, which isn't as nice as it sounds. It's not people who listen to Billy Idol. It's a nasty chemical that got into the reservoir, like the sub-ground level. I mean, and poisoned the entire county. So when
Whoa.
people talk to me about like the big, big ag and all that, I would point out that to the best of my knowledge, and you can set me right if I'm wrong, there's never been an issue with goat milk because it's never been on a large scale in America, right?
I'm I, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm going to say that that is a very broad statement,
Okay,
that there's
yeah.
never been an
Well,
issue.
sure. I mean, somebody could do something,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah. I mean, you've dealt with some pretty shady characters.
Oh, yes. And the shady characters do not have a monopoly on cow dairy, but I would say that because goat dairy is so much more niche, that you're, yeah, but that's a big, huge, sweeping statement that there's never been an issue. Like, you still have to have safe, clean practices.
Oh yeah, certainly, yeah. And I don't know if I've never heard of an issue with sheep milk.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying I've never heard of
Hmm.
an issue. Now, I've heard of an issue with commercial dairies, and I've heard of issues with people who mishandle raw milk, without a doubt. So,
Absolutely.
why don't you tell us about the Amish gangster?
Well, I do cover this in the book quite a bit. Sometimes, well, no, I think that it's fair to say that when governments or other forces come in and control something, black markets come up.
Hmm.
And whether that's like our government on the federal level or whether that's something else, another entity, that's not part of this conversation. In this case, it is our government banning the interstate transportation of raw milk and making it really hard for states to make raw milk legal for human consumption. And so what happens is a black market springs up. And when you have a black market, you don't have some of those safety protocols in place and you have some really sketchy players involved. And contrary to popular belief, some of those are the Amish. They've done a really good job branding themselves in a way, but they don't necessarily do a great job on the cleanliness side of things. And I'll just leave it at that for now. If you want more
Well, I can
information
pick
on
up a
that,
little bit. Yeah, I love the Amish. Had plenty of interactions with them. Um, there is sort of an attitude of we are the Amish and you're not. And what we
yep,
may sell to you may not necessarily be what we would serve to our families. And and let me tell you, if you're wearing a crucifix, look out. It's I'm not denigrating the entire community users. There are many fantastic Amish people. I mean, they came up here to the mountains of North Carolina after the hurricane and started building houses for people. I mean, just out of goodwill. But well, I'll just put it this way. It's just like mountain people. You talk about a black market. Yeah, there's some people that would make really good moonshine and really good brandy. And they were took a lot of pride in it, but that's a black market, isn't it? So there were other people that started running it through old radiators, lead-based radiators to cool that steam down a little bit quicker. And a lot of people went blind or got what they call Jake leg, which is essentially if you mix, well, it's not ethanol. I can't remember. It's an adulterant to alcohol. It was very popular during Prohibition. There was a carve out. There were two carve outs actually. The wealthy could always get brandy from the pharmacies. They could get Coors,
yes,
Courvoisier, but they could get the good stuff from. I mean, and they were wealthy, right? Our government actually poisoned over
yes.
10,000 people with bad liquor as a warning to say, and I mean, I got an article from the Smithsonian Magazine. I'll try to send it to you. They
Oh,
literally sent
that's
out bad liquor to people. But one of the carve
yeah.
outs was like basically a cough syrup of ginger and
Hmm.
a high alcohol cough syrup. And it was adulterated, and you would drink it, and if you lived, the right side of your body would be paralyzed. So,
So I cover what you're talking about. I cover that extensively on my
oh
Substack,
yeah,
and I
that's
cover
right, you did.
I touch
Yeah.
on a lot of it in the book, but it's very detailed and thoroughly covered on the Substack.
Yeah, that is true. I remember that now. It's been a few months since I read it,
Yep.
but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, but that there's two sets of um two tiers basically. There's the wealthy, just like there was during Prohibition for alcohol. And it's almost an exact parallel, Judson, which
Hmm.
is eerie and also not because we're humans and humans do the same stupid things over and over and over.
Yeah, no, no doubt about it. I mean, if I go down to, say I'm in the center of the state and there are big Mexican communities, well, like where Smithfield is, and I go down there, I can absolutely buy raw milk. I mean, it's North Carolina where raw milk is more illegal than marijuana. But if I go down to the Mexican community, I can absolutely buy raw milk. I can buy beautiful meats, cabrito. I mean, hand butchered, I mean, no inspection, nobody cares. I remember one time I was thinking about opening a barbecue joint, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it was barbecue, and I talked with the county health inspector. I said, "What do I have to do? What hoops do I have to jump through?" He's like, "Well, you need a commercial kitchen. It's going to cost you about 50,000. You got to have your parking lot. You got to have your handicap accessible doors. You got to have this many bathrooms. You got to have this many sinks. You got to have." And I said, "Well, the Mexicans on the other side of town have a little tamale joint out of a gas station. We don't worry about them. They're illegals." So I
Yeah.
can
Well, the double
absolutely.
standard is really something, right? And that
Yeah.
you get that a little bit also with the Amish. There's a double standard going on. And that double standard, I mean, in any human situation, people don't like double standards, do they? So
No.
you get a fair amount of pushback on that alone. But that when the more apparent the double standards become, the more frustrating they become.
Oh yeah. And the other side of that coin is a lot of the wealthy folks around Pinehurst and such. I mean, they can get some really nice cheese. I mean, they have
Oh
some
yeah.
nice raw milk cheese. I mean, San Andre, the good stuff.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you can pay the big bucks, you get the good stuff. If you're dirt poor and nobody cares about you, you can get the good stuff. It's all of us in between.
Right. Well, what amazes me, one of the things is, let's just say the black market, generally speaking, not picking on anybody here, but in general, the black market, that people are paying enormous amounts for milk that's supposed to be really
Yeah.
good, but that is not good. It spoils in a
Yeah.
couple of days, or it just always has that icky farmy taste. And, if there's anything like people, raw milk is delicious and it should be and it can be. So if it's not
Mhm.
delicious and you're paying a lot of money for it, you're getting it from the wrong source.
Yeah. So South Carolina has legalized the sale of raw milk, but you can't find anybody who sells it. North Carolina, like I said, it's more illegal than pot. I mean, you can literally just walk down the street and get a handful of fentanyl or, whatever you want.
Hmm.
You can't get raw milk in North Carolina unless you go to the black market. And I have, I'll
Well, I
admit it.
thought I thought North Carolina had herd shares.
As what?
Herd shares.
Oh, yeah, you can do herd share. You
Okay.
can do that, but you
Yeah.
can't go to a store.
Right.
Um, and I have bought some sketchy milk. I have bought some milk that was chunky and tasted a little vinegary. I'll just put it that way. And if that's somebody's only experience with raw milk,
Yeah.
that's not the stuff.
No. No. Like yeah, and if it is your experience with raw milk, it's get something better.
No, I've definitely had it was buttermilk. There's no doubt about that.
Oof.
And it made me pretty sick too. It absolutely did. It made me pretty darn sick.
Yeah.
You got to trust your nose.
Oh
That's why
yes.
we have it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, now we've talked about a little legal issues and all that. Your kids are having health issues. You found raw milk to really be a benefit. Going back to the Amish, we can look at their records. We see they don't have asthma like most of the population. They don't have allergies like most of the population. They rarely get the flu and such as that.
Well,
Their cancer
hold
rates
on,
are
hold on. Let
low.
me stop you right there because
Okay.
that is not true.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
not true. Like I've seen those headlines as well, and it's whatever research that's coming from is just not well done. Because if
Okay.
you're like, I mean, you're among the Amish, they do. But I don't even know where to go with that. There's so many angles to address. The Amish get sick, the Amish get cancer, the Amish have allergies. Like it's
Hmm.
it's just not true. So wherever that's coming from, it needs another look. And I know that like it's a
Okay.
very popular, I've seen it explode several times, like back all the way in early 2000s when I was first blogging, like articles about the Amish being so super healthy just blew up and got so many hits. And
Yeah,
it's it's
especially during
it's just
COVID.
not
Yeah.
accurate. It's not
Okay.
accurate. Like if you spend
Well, and
time with
also you got
them.
to remember, they're a very narrow genetic group. And we
Yes.
are very sensitive to things depending on our genetic predisposition. So if someone is like saying this, I studied the Amish and I found that, well, it's like Ansel Keys, right? You remember Ansel Keys?
Oh yes, of
Uh,
course. The cholesterol
yes,
myth. I mean,
the cholesterol man. He
Yeah.
goes to Europe during Lent and says Europeans don't eat meat and they're all healthy, so we should all eat nothing but fish, right?
Well, and then he's
Well,
very specifically took out the
yeah,
populations that didn't agree with his already formed hypothesis.
right. Well, you could do the
Like,
same thing with the Amish. I mean, you might have a
exactly.
family that has a very
Exactly.
specific genetic line because, okay, look, everybody makes fun of us hillbillies for being inbred. You want to see inbred?
I
I mean,
know.
any tribe on the face of the earth, I don't care if you're Cherokee or you're an African tribe or you're Jewish or you're Amish, which isn't a tribe, but it's a subgroup. Inbreeding does actually make for certain characteristics. There's a reason why Scottish are big people that can throw telephone poles around. There's a reason why Asians are generally not tall. It's just the way it goes. But anyway, yes, your point, very, very valid. I would have to see those studies. Are they peer reviewed? I don't know, but they're
Right.
certainly repeated quite a bit. But that did lead me to say, what are the health benefits of raw milk?
What are the health benefits? Now that is a great question. And we can look at things sort of from a modern lens on that and what does the microscope say, or we can look at things from a traditional and holistic approach. And I think it's really helpful to look at both. So I want to address it on the big scale, the holistic population level scale for a second and talk about food security. So throughout history, calories are hard to get, and people have generally had to use a lot of energy to get proper nourishment. And then about 10,000-ish years ago, we start co-evolving with cow as a domesticated animal. And so all of a sudden we're
Mhm.
getting humans, well, I should say cow, goats, sheep, camels, and water buffalo. It's not
Right.
just exclusively cows and cattle. And we start getting this easier access to certain key nutrients by getting them from the cow that's eating the grass that we can't eat. I'm gonna keep saying cow, but I really mean all of the
Ruminants.
ruminants that we co-evolved with over the past few millennia. So this provided a level of nutrition and food security. You can take those animals with you. You're nomadic, you travel with them. You can take them with you and you can keep getting those nutrients. So, on a very basic level, one of the health benefits of raw milk is food security. You're literally going to get enough calories, you're going to get beneficial nutrition. And as you touched on earlier, even in places, especially maybe in places that don't have cold climates and refrigeration, you get fermented milk products, which add a whole nother level of beneficial probiotics and breakdown of certain proteins and sugars that make it easier to digest. And you get, in addition to that initial fermentation process, you get cheese. And who doesn't love cheese? But that's the natural
Actually, my dad hated
preservation.
cheese. I have to say, my dad, who owned a cheese shop, hated cheese.
Oh
That should have
no.
been the first warning to my mother that he was not the right pick. I'm just going to put it that way. He hated cheese and he hated music.
Oh, goodness gracious. Wow. How does one go on? But yeah, seriously though, like cheese is the natural preservation of
Right.
milk. It's how we take something that maybe lasts one day fresh without refrigeration, and we turn it into something that can last us years. I mean, look at Parmesan, right? That's like
Oh, yeah.
minimum 2 years aged. And
Minimum.
you
Yeah.
get like, and also when you look at something like Parmesan, it's so that's so protein dense.
Yeah.
So for any cultures that had trouble accessing proper protein but could have plenty of milk in the summer months when the grass is growing rapidly, you take that protein source and you preserve it through cheese. Okay, there you go. Huge benefit of raw milk is stability in calories and food security and access to protein all the time because of the natural preservation you get. All right, so if you're a modern American and you're looking at like, how can this help my body? What you get with milk is you get a certain amount of probiotics in it in the fresh milk.
Mhm.
And the pasteurization process destroys whatever good bacteria are in there and it destroys the enzymes. And we're going to just, for the purposes of this conversation, we're just talking about the 160-degree pasteurization. Ultra pasteurized is like not a food that our body recognizes
No,
at
it's not.
all, and it
And it's
just
all we can get in North
shouldn't exist.
Carolina. That's
So
it.
we're just
That's
going to
all
talk
we can
about,
get.
yeah. So we're just going to talk about 160-degree pasteurized milk, and that it denatures the proteins. What does that mean? It means that your proteins, which includes enzymes, they are normally, like, think of proteins as three-dimensional and they're flattened. So when you have enzymes like lactase, this is probably familiar to many people, especially those who have been told they're lactose intolerant,
Right.
that enzyme no longer works. And what that enzyme does is it breaks apart the lactose sugar, which we cannot digest at all. We
Hmm.
need that enzyme, and it turns the enzyme turns that lactose molecule into glucose and galactose, which we can break down. So some people, you might see this claim some places that, oh, raw milk doesn't actually contain lactase. No, even if it doesn't, when you look at it, it contains lactobacillus bacteria,
Hmm.
which produce lactase. So it basically does, and it's just a play on words when the people against raw milk say that. So just look at it as a play on words. Raw milk has, as a part of its ecosystem, lactobacillus bacteria, which create the enzyme lactase, which helps us digest the lactose. So, number one health benefit. Also, the enzyme phosphatase, which, if you can guess from the name, helps us with the absorption of phosphorus.
Hmm.
And phosphorus, oh, yeah, phosphorus goes, the phosphatase helps take that phosphorus, free floating phosphorus, out of our blood and puts it into our bones.
Hmm.
Okay, so check that. And then look at when women, especially middle aged and older women, switch from pasteurized milk, which does not have that enzyme, to raw milk, which does have that enzyme, their levels of osteoporosis go down.
Hmm.
They get
Hmm.
improved bone density. So that's another benefit. Then you can start looking at the fat benefit. It's a whole complete, we recognize that fat, it's not homogenized, which is the squishing of that fat molecule to make it so tiny that our bodies don't even
Hmm.
know what it is. So there's questions around the homogenization process. I haven't seen anything super definitive, so I'm not going to make any claims about that, but there's questions about how tiny that
Yeah.
fat molecule is and
No,
how
that makes a
our
lot of
body.
sense because, on the farm, we never had homogenized milk. The cream would
Exactly.
float to the top. And
Exactly.
you can, well, okay, so one thing I think I would, just to put out a blanket statement here, um, pasteurized milk, especially ultra pasteurized milk, which we agree is not really a food. Um, you can't even make cheese out of ultra pasteurized milk.
Right.
I mean, trust me, y'all, try it. You cannot even make mozzarella out of ultra pasteurized milk. I tried. You end up with a golf ball. I mean, that's it. It's horrible. Um, when I look at like in my family and think about, I think that pasteurized, especially ultra pasteurized milk, is more inflammatory
Yeah.
because of the way our bodies do try to break down or cannot break down. Whereas the raw natural milk, or especially the non-homogenized, where you got that beautiful layer of cream sitting on
Right.
top, and you're taking that and you're using it and you're making butter out of it and you're putting it on everything, you're cooking with it, um, extremely anti-inflammatory. And inflammation leads to a lot of diseases, cancers, and such as that. So
So
if
let
the
me break
Amish
that
do
down
have a
even
lower
more.
level of cancer, then maybe that
Yeah.
may have something to do with it.
But let's break that down a little more, Judson,
Yeah.
and look at um, with pasteurized milk. Okay, I want to touch on first. We're going to talk about the histamines, but let's touch on later the
Yeah.
production practices. So when you
Hmm.
have pasteurized milk, you just pull a gallon of milk off the grocery store shelf, you're likely getting milk from thousands of animals.
Hmm.
And the way that that milk is produced is those cows are generally, I'm not speaking across the board, but generally they're kept in confinement and they're fed a high grain diet. So they're getting
Hmm.
corn and soy pellets. And you bet that those are GMO grains.
Hmm.
And they're getting this feed that's not designed for cows. And what happens is because that milk is intended for pasteurization, they have a really high allowable limits of bacteria in that milk.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Well, and I also
That
have a
high
concern with
bacteria milk gets
mastitis.
shipped off. Hold on one second. That high
Yeah,
bacteria milk
sure.
gets shipped off to the pasteurizer where it gets heated and the bacteria get killed. And then you drink those
Right.
dead bacteria.
Yeah, but I mean, I also have an issue with mastitis. Haven't been around cattle before. I mean, those the mechanical milkers and such. Um, you're not supposed to
Yeah.
include milk from a cow that has mastitis in with your milk, but that's not something that just happens in the blink of an eye. It's a process. There's a buildup of inflammation, infection. I'm not at all convinced that in pus and blood are not going into my milk.
So that's the yeah. I mean, so that's part of why people who drink pasteurized milk often have a histamine reaction because they are getting all of this is just dead. And to your point on that, that process, I mean, when you're looking at the dairies that milk thousands or tens of thousands of cows, and you're looking at then commingling milk from multiple dairies into the pasteurizing process, you don't know what you're getting. But at the same time, Judson, I will say there are processes in place to keep the mastitis cows from to keep that milk out of
Yeah,
them.
they're supposed to
There,
be.
there
I'll
are,
just put
and
it
I,
that
I,
way. They're
I want to
supposed to be.
speak. I want to just speak to the dairy industry in general and say that our dairy farmers are so dedicated. They care so much. They are full of heart and they're full of hard work. And I'm going to say I have not ever met a dairy farmer that's not doing an amazing job. And I'm not speaking about the Colorado 200,000 cow dairies. I don't know anything about those
Hmm.
ones, but the family ones that are milking, 30 to a few hundred cows, like they are all heart. They do their
Oh yeah, yeah.
absolute best. Now,
And in Virginia, you still have those. Yeah,
yeah,
we're pretty much
exactly.
we don't
Yeah.
really have a dairy industry at all in North Carolina anymore.
Yeah, which is really sad, right? But also I want to clarify what mastitis is for anybody who's not sure what we're talking
Yep.
about. Mastitis is essentially an infection of the milk ducts, and nursing mothers get them also
Hmm.
frequently, too frequently. It's terrible. And cows, like every nursing mammal, can get it. Um,
Yep.
and
And I have
it's
herbs
an
for that.
infection. Yeah. What? Oh yeah,
And
you
I
have
have
herbs
herbs
for
for
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start with cabbage leaves, actually.
Okay.
Cabbage leaves are a great old home remedy. They'll actually reduce the inflammation. It's not going to help with the infection stuff, but the swelling and hardness and the pain. And basically, a lot of times, if you get that under control, a secondary infection doesn't even happen.
Okay. What about if one does not have cabbage leaves?
What if one does not have cabbage leaves? That is a foreign concept to me.
Really? Do you
Uh,
have cabbage all year round?
I have cabbage. I live in the mountains. Are you kidding me? We
Okay.
used to have the biggest sauerkraut industry in the entire United States right here. Our cabbages grow blue. They're beautiful.
Wow.
Absolutely blue. Now,
Wow.
if you didn't have cabbage, you could use anything in the Cruciferaceae family that would be serviceable. I mean,
Yeah.
collards would work. Obviously, I don't think you're going to get very far with broccoli. Um,
So do you just warm up the leaf? Do you boil the leaf
yeah,
and
you
put
just put
it
it on cold.
topically?
Yeah, it's just put on cold. Baseball players used to put cabbage leaves under their hat
Oh,
to, help prevent heat stroke. There's a chemical composition of. Okay, so if you cook cabbage or collard greens, you know how they stink.
I think we're way off topic.
I know, but you know how they stink, right? It's ammonia. Ammonia is
Yeah.
escaping from the cabbage when ammonia evaporates at a higher level, so it does actually have a naturally cooling effect. So, and then of course you have antibiotic herbs, you have garlic, you have all kinds of different things you can use. But yeah, first, a plantain would be a good alternative. Not in the same family, but very antibacterial, antibiotic, and cooling as well. So, yeah,
So usually when I say plantain to an American, they're like the banana? So what we mean when we say plantain, it's a
yeah,
wild, we consider it a weed here,
the
but it's
weeds.
a
Yeah.
plant that is in most of our yards and parks and forests and
Yep.
everywhere. It's
Brought
broadleaf
here is
plantain.
to be food and medicine. It now
Hmm.
considered a weed. Plantago major, Plantago minor, broadleaf or narrowleaf. You may
Hmm.
remember your kid, you took the stalk with a little flower and you could pop it at somebody like a little pop
Yes.
gun.
I I love it. That's a great context. Yes. So that plantain, yes, is
Yeah.
very medicinal. So
Oh,
we've ventured from raw milk off to
yeah.
herbal
And now
medicine.
let's talk about okay, so I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just obsessed with food. I'm half French. What are you going to do, right? First thing I think of when I think of raw milk is the flavor, and the flavor is fantastic. And actually, even buttermilk really tastes a whole lot better from raw milk. I'm
Yes.
not a big fan of buttermilk at all, actually. I like sour cream, yeah, a little buttermilk, but I think of the Roqueforts. I think of
Oh,
the
yes.
beautiful
Oof.
blue cheeses and the runny camemberts. You cannot do that with ultra pasteurized milk. Trust me, I've tried.
Right.
Like I said, little rubber ball, that's what you come out
Hmm.
with. But there is sort of like what I would say a middle, and it's traditionally pasteurized milk, where you bring it slowly up to temperature. And like if you live in North Carolina, you're not going to be able to get anything but on ultra pasteurized milk. Tell us a little bit about the traditional pasteurization, which is still not ideal, I understand that, but does preserve some of those flavors.
Well, I think you're talking about not necessarily traditional, but modern, right? Like,
Well,
what?
you bring it up slowly to a temperature,
Yeah.
you don't blast it, and
But
then you let it
most
come
people
back.
throughout history have not used that process at all.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
so you're talking about like
Well,
the
I mean
past
traditional
100
from like
years.
1900. Okay,
Okay.
1900,
Yeah.
1920. Yeah.
So that would be what we today we would call gently pasteurized, which means
Right,
it's
right.
brought up to 160 degrees. So after cooling, so it gets cooled rapidly after it gets milked,
Hmm.
and it gets stored in a cold tank on the farm, and then the milk truck comes and picks it up in a cold truck and takes it to the pasteurization plant where it then gets heated up to 161 degrees. It's kept there for 15 seconds and then it gets rapidly cooled again. And so
And
that's what, if you just go to the store and you pick up a gallon of milk and it says pasteurized, that's what they're talking about. And that's way better than the ultra pasteurized. Way better.
right.
It's still not
Now,
raw. It's still not going to have the same small
yeah, well,
scale.
tell us the difference between raw and that style of pasteurized. Why would you prefer raw over just like you described it, brought to 161, cooled down, still
Yeah.
has good flavor, still has good body on the tongue.
Yeah.
Tell us the difference between the two.
Well, now we're going to get into production. So when you are getting raw milk from a small local farmer, you can put your eyes on it. You can see, like, is that cow grass fed? And for the most part, all of the raw milk dairies are doing, at least the small scale ones. There might be a couple out in California not, but the small scale ones are 100% grass fed. And that's important. That's important to the people who are getting the milk, and it's important to the farmer that these cows are getting grass. They're out on pasture all the time. And that they're getting milked by a person. Like even if it's not if it's a closed milking system, they're
Hmm.
still getting milked. There's interaction there. There's a person there checking on them. I've participated in several of these, and it's you really get like you get to be with the animal. It's not just a completely mechanized system. And you're starting off with a different product than the pasteurization plants start with because you're getting that small scale, the grass fed, the 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 animals are getting treated like the animal that they are. Does
Right,
that make sense?
right. Oh
Right. So you're
yeah,
starting
milking
off
a
with a
farm.
different
Yeah.
product.
You put your
Yeah.
head against a cow when you milk the cow, and the cow is going
Yes.
to bond with you, and that
Yes.
cow is going to give better milk, and the cow is going to give more milk, and it's just a natural process. People may think that's crazy. I mean, I think most people think of cows as like a a robot out there in the field eating. They're really quite personable animals,
They
actually,
are. They
and
are.
I don't think I don't know. Again, should I make a broad generalized statement? I don't know. I have known hunters who were people after seeing the way they hunt, I would never associate with them again. I've known farmers that I would never associate with them again after seeing the way they do things, raising dogs for fighting and such as that. I mean, bad stuff. Um, but for someone who actually does care for their cattle, they really care for that cattle. I mean,
Yes.
they'll be
Yes.
up all night for calving. I mean, it's it's that was one thing when these the ranchers were coming after me for saying that maybe Argentinian grass-fed beef is better than corn-fed American beef, and they're like, we do this, we do. I'm like, yeah, I know, dude, I know. I grew up right beside you. I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. But there are good practices, and we can follow good practices. Going back to Smithfield, I will not buy any pork from Smithfield. I eat
Yeah.
a lot of pork. I eat a lot
Yeah.
of pork. I can save a lot of money if I bought from Smithfield, but they're good practices and they're bad practices.
Yes, exactly. So, and I'm not going to say like I know a lot of farms in Maryland that sell to the milk truck because they have to, and they're
Hmm.
wonderful farms. So I'm not going to say that like all the milk from the shelf like isn't like the farming practices aren't good. Like I think a lot of them are really
For
good
sure.
practices. You just don't know what you're getting. You
Exactly.
really don't. And then also like it is heated. So the heat process, it kills everything.
Hmm.
That being said, like one of the things that I talk about in the book is the importance of maintaining and restoring our small scale local dairies. And if that means that people want to buy the milk raw and then home pasteurize it, hey, if
Hmm.
you're ambivalent about raw milk and you want to keep pasteurizing it, great, do it. But start with milk from a known source to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they used to sell home pasteurization equipment, home
Judson, it's called a
homogenization equipment.
pan.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
called
But
a
like if you go back
pan.
to the old Sears catalog, I mean, they actually had specific. But yeah, that's true.
You don't need
But you,
anything fancy.
yeah,
Maybe
no, you don't
maybe a
need anything
thermometer.
fancy.
Most kitchens have that anyway.
Yeah, and most
But
kitchens,
like if you
absolutely.
don't
If
have a
you've ever made
thermometer when it's too hot to
candy or
touch.
something, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that was common in our grandparents' kitchen. They had a thermometer. There's no doubt about it. Because you couldn't make fudge without it.
right.
Everybody wants fudge.
But also like the pasteurization temperature you can feel with your body when it's too hot to touch
Yeah.
comfortably. You're it's I mean obviously like I'm not telling people what to do. I'm not advocating for this. Like I believe in numbers and science and all of
Hmm.
that blah blah blah. But like we're humans. We've been humans for a lot longer than pasteurization has been around or kitchen thermometers. So
Well,
I
heck,
want to
if
get back to being humans and let cows be cows and let us be together and
yeah,
do what
I
humans have.
mean, what was it, Genghis Khan? The what the most ruthless, powerful ruler next to Alexander the Great that ever lived. He lived on mare's milk.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
literally.
mean, maybe he's not the best example though.
Yeah, of course not. No, he actually drank himself to death. After he changed from fermented mare's milk, he went to wine and had a fountain of wine. And he would literally just like walk out there and just like stand under it and guzzle it until he passed out. But so probably not the best example, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And
Well, let's
actually,
look at, like you
we
said,
don't.
like cows are not native to North America.
Right.
So one of the little historical tidbits that I love to look at is that, okay, I understand the history of America. I know the history of America. I know that there's some problems with the history there, but the Jamestown settlement did not survive until they brought cows with them.
Right. Exactly. And really, I don't think we have any native ruminants that were milked in a widespread way. Do we?
Can you imagine milking a bison? No.
Exactly.
Like,
Or a deer. I mean, chase down a
no.
deer in the woods. I don't think so. But
Yeah.
anyway, and that's like probably the reason so many Japanese are lactose intolerant because they didn't really have native ruminants that they milked for generations. And you got something to say about that? I can see it.
Oh, well, remember, we're all lactose intolerant. It's
Oh, that's right.
some of
Okay.
us maintain. So as infants, we have the enzyme lactase because we have to digest mother's milk.
Right.
And some of us retain that enzyme for longer than others, but we absolutely have to have that enzyme. And we can get that enzyme. It's not just available through fermented milk products, it's also available through sauerkraut and other fermented
That's
products.
right. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, lactic acid, absolutely. That's what ferments sauerkraut. Yeah, and I don't know why we don't drink horse milk in America. I don't know why we don't eat horse meat in America. That's something I've never been able to understand. I mean, Europe does, Asia does. We
The
kind of have this like,
emotional, the emotional side of it, I think.
yeah, I don't
But yeah,
know.
I mean, it just tells you how culturally, what's the word? How much these choices and food systems are tied to the emotion and the culture.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you do what you're taught. That's what it comes down to. Very few of us venture outside of that. I think you and I have, and I think
Hmm.
that's why we enjoy talking about this stuff. But
Yep.
okay, so we let's go ahead and wrap it up. Tell me all about your book. Where can we buy it? Tell me about your website. Tell me about your blog. Tell me about your Substack. Sell everything you got right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Stetson. My website is nourishingliberty.com. You can buy the book through there. I made a deliberate and conscientious choice not to put it on any digital platform. It's locally printed, not local to here, but from a small print shop in Chicago, who's also a raw milk drinker. That is why. And yeah, it's very important to me to keep all of the AI stuff out of my writing. I don't
Yeah,
use it. I
yeah.
don't want to. I don't want it to take my writing, all of that. So it's only available through my website. You can get it at nourishingliberty.com. And then my Substack, Raw Milk Mama, you can find me through searching that on Substack or my name, Liz Reitzig. And there's also the podcast, Judson, the Nourishing Liberty podcast, both on Substack and on Spotify and all the places where podcasts stream. And what else? I teach classes.
Cool.
If you're local, sign up for a class. If you're local to the DC area, I've got classes on cooking and nutrition and homeschooling, like classes for homeschoolers,
Hmm.
and
And
herbal
you're an advocate.
classes
Don't forget you're also an advocate.
and an advocate. Yes. So I work on policy stuff, and I've worked with a lot of farmers on court cases, especially involving raw milk and when they get targeted by enforcement agencies. So if you are a farmer in that situation, give me a call.
And you worked with my old buddy Eustace Conway.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Here, I
Yep.
let my hair down, and you can remember why I was once mistaken for his younger brother.
I can see that, Judson. Yeah, totally.
Oh, what a character. Did I tell
Yes.
you the first time I met him, he was sleeping under a rhododendron bush?
No,
Yeah,
that sounds like quite a
Merlefest. I was
story.
at Merlefest. I was playing with, gosh, I just had lunch with Emmylou Harris. I was playing with my heroes. I'm put on a stage in front of 10,000 people. I walk off, and there's a guy sleeping under a bush. Stoned out of his mind, of course. And it turns out to be my old buddy Eustace. And yeah, we used to
Oh,
hang out quite a bit. Went
it
down to the
sounds
Turtle
sounds like
Island many
something he would
times.
do too.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, I don't care. There's
Yeah.
40,000 people here. I'm just going to go sleep under a bush. All right. Well, it's been always a pleasure. Always enjoy talking with you. I love it. What I like about you the most. Um, a lot of times when I interview people, they just say what I want them to say, and you're like, nope, that's not right. I'm going to tell you why that's wrong. I love that. I absolutely
Well,
love
great.
that. And
Good.
so we need to do this again whenever you want to. Anytime you're welcome on my show.
Thanks, Judson. Thanks so much for having me on. And of course, I'm going to be cross-posting this as well. So thank you. And let's keep on keeping on.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Everybody go buy her book. Liz, let me make sure I get the name right. Reitzing,
Reitzig, Reitzeig.
Reitzig. I have so much trouble with that. I don't know
That's
why
okay.
I'm dyslexic and it's the E before I thing, because it's supposed, anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I do.
Liz Reitzig, go buy her book and listen to her podcast, follow her online, get on her Substack. It's really interesting. I
Thank
mean, it's like, like one of those like outlaw shows on a reality TV thing. I mean, she starts talking about the Amish mafia. You're like on the edge of your seat. Uh, she's got a good way with the dramatics. But anyway, y'all, have a good one. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.